involved in last summer's shooting death of African-American Jalen Walker. Court observers predict a decision could come early this week. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Starting with a crash in Alhambra, 2 left lanes are blocked on the 10 westbound at Atlantic Boulevard, and right now traffic is stop and go starting at Garfield Avenue. Crash in Mid-City LA made it to the right-hand shoulder on the 10 westbound at La Brea Avenue. That was adding to a slow drive on Normandy Avenue. And watch for crashes reported now in Long Beach on the 710 southbound at Long Beach Boulevard. Left lane blocked off by those vehicles. The 710 slowing down back at Rosecrans Avenue. Vehicles stalled in Long Beach 91 Eastman at Paramount. That's stuck in the carpool lane.
Looking for a late night spot to get the crew together? 3 words, Buffalo Wild Wings. They've got drinks and apps starting at $4 from 10 p.m. till close. B-Dubs, where late night food and drinks start at $4. Cheers to that. Limited time at participating locations. Offer days and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void or prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very impressive debut in the NBA playoffs for the Lakers and Clippers. The Lakers win by 16 at Memphis. The Clippers hold on for a 5-point win in Phoenix. 4 Laker players scored 20 or more. Rui Hachimura had 29 off the bench. John Moran suffered a serious injury to his right hand when he fell hard to the floor on a drive to the basket. Moran is doubtful for Game 2 Wednesday night. Tip-off at 4:30 on TNT. The Clippers get 38 from Kawhi Leonard to hold off Phoenix. 9 points, 11 rebounds, 3 block shots, 2 steals, and 5 offensive rebounds. Game 2 for the Clippers and Phoenix is Tuesday at 7 on TNT. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Stand up and fight! When news breaks, you can count on KBLA Talk 1580 for exclusive interviews.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. Incredibly delighted to welcome Tennessee State Representative Justin Pearson. Brother, welcome to the show.
As Tennesseans, as Americans, as people of conscience, our responsibility is to get proximate to this movement. This is the moment. Folks always wonder, is this time for me to start using my voice for speaking up, for advocating for issues? This is it. This is it. The present moment where we are seeing the erosion of democracy, where we're seeing duly elected officials being expelled because we're raising the issue about the need to end gun violence and protect communities. And so for everyone who has ever had a thought that I need to do something, I need to be engaged, this is the moment to transform our cities, our counties, our states, and the United States of America.
Weekdays, weekends. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for the conversations that matter most to you. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Live from Leimert Park, USA, I'm Tavis, Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you right now to download our app and listen to us anywhere in the world in real time. Download the app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of our program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping on the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. And let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, have you ever thought about the impact, the threat, in fact, that social media and nonstop content pose not merely to our minds and our human interaction, but to the stability of our republic? Get this. New data suggests that most fellow citizens think social media is undermining our very democracy. A conversation with award-winning journalist Ray Marcano in Hour 2 about the significant ways in which social media challenges our ability to engage in thoughtful, critical, and civil dialogue. In our third hour, a conversation about the art of code switching. Is code switching a form of assimilation or a necessary survival strategy in a world where our differences can create barriers to connection? And what happens when keeping it real, so to speak, goes horribly wrong? We'll be joined in Hour 3 by an expert in these matters, Harold Wallace III of Wichita State University. But let's commence today's program talking politics with Washington, D.C. based HuffPost reporter Paul Blumenthal, who I'm delighted to have back on this program. Paul, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on again.
Hey, it's good to have you back on again. It's hard to know where to start. So much to talk about in this hour. And then again, it's easy to know where to start because I want to hone in on something that it seems like I've been discussing like every Monday. It happens all the time, but I was thinking this morning for the last 3 or 4 weeks consecutively, every Monday when we start out the week, there's a new story to unpack about another mass shooting in this country. So there are two headlines all over the place this morning. One is a story of investigators scrambling to find whoever killed 4 people, including students, and injured dozens more at an Alabama Sweet 16 party. So in the state of Alabama, Sweet 16 party, 4 people killed, including students, many others injured, dozens more injured in Alabama. In Kansas City, a teenager was shot by a homeowner after going to the wrong house to pick up his siblings. Just a gorgeous picture of this young black brother playing his saxophone in the band. And he went to the wrong house to pick up his siblings and got shot a few times. Just unbelievable what this country is enduring unabated, Paul, when it comes to guns. So on the one hand, I'm going to be frank. On the one hand, I'm tired of having this conversation. Nothing seems to move on it, and yet it's one of those things where if we ignore it and we don't talk about it, then it will certainly continue, as I said, unabated. So here we are again, another week with another mass shooting. I've lost count. I mean, we are obviously, as I've said many times, averaging many more mass shootings than we have days in the year. Last time I checked, we were at 100 days in the year. This is last week. We were 100 days in the year and 140 some odd, 143 as I recall, something like that. 100 days in the year, 143 mass shootings. That was last week, so the number obviously continues to rise. I digress on the point for now. Your take, Paul, on this issue of guns and gun violence, whether it's in Alabama at a Sweet 16 party or a young black teenager, a black teenager in Kansas City going to the wrong house.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this just, as you said, just continues to be a depressing fact of life in this country. And, very little seems to be getting done. I mean, there's appears to be no appetite for this in Washington with Republicans in control of the House, with the filibuster still existing in the Senate. There were also mass shootings in Nashville, Tennessee, which, spurred the protests in the legislature, mass shooting in Kentucky as well. And in both of those, people who died were friends of, elected leaders, Governor Bill Lee in Tennessee, Governor Andy Beshear in Kentucky, Senator Rick Scott here in Washington. Despite this, their friends being murdered in mass shootings, very little is getting done. And, I mean, you just see the influence of the gun lobby in this, and also the influence of the Supreme Court, which has, last year made it so much harder for any state or locality or the federal government to put restrictions on guns. It's a depressing situation in this country we have.
Leave it to my trusty producer, JD, to give me the facts. We are now 107 days in. As I mentioned just last week, we got 100 when we talked about this last. So today we are 107 days into the year, 160 mass shootings. 107 days into the year, 160 mass shootings. I wonder if I say that, every week, whether or not it would impact our consciousness about how bad gun violence is in this country. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, since nothing else seems to move the needle. But once again, 107 days in the year. We are today 160 mass shootings and counting. Paul Blumenthal a moment ago referenced the mass shootings in Nashville, which led to the protests in the Tennessee Assembly, which led to the ouster of two African Americans, both named Justin Jones and Justin Pearson. Justin Pearson has been a guest on our station here. Eloquent brother, eloquent. And the sister, Gloria Johnson, the white woman who was with them but did not get expelled, I believe is a guest on our program tomorrow. Is that correct, JD? Yeah. So she's a guest. We've all heard from the two Justins. They've been everywhere. And I'm glad that Justin Pearson made his way to KBLA. But I am interested to hear from the white woman, from the sister in this regard, who did not get expelled, and what she has to say. So I believe tomorrow morning in our 9 o'clock hour, we will be joined by Gloria Johnson, the other state rep involved in as part of the Tennessee 3, as they are being called. She'll be one of our guests tomorrow in our first hour. When we come forward, though, I want to get Paul's take on the way that story played out. It was ugly. It was nasty. It was racist, to my mind, and a bunch of other things that I'll talk about on the other side. And yet, when all was said and done, the two Justins, Pearson and Jones, are now back where they belong, back to where, sitting in those seats to which they were duly elected. I was with my friend and brother Raphael Warnock, who was in town this weekend. We were together Saturday and Sunday. Spent a lot of good time together this weekend. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and we spent some time talking about this Tennessee drama, and I want to take Paul's temperature on that when we come forward. We're in hour one, just getting started here on a Monday. Our guest in this hour is HuffPost journalist Paul Blumenthal. A great deal more to unpack as we move through this hour. Don't move. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
The clock is ticking, and there's just a few days left before God's Trying to Tell You Something comes to town.
We interrupt this program to bring you this special report. The 2 p.m. performance of God's Trying to Tell You Something is sold out.
That's the bad news. The good news is there's one last performance. Saturday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Wilshire Ebell Theater.
Get your tickets now
And be in the house.
see what everybody's talking about.
All remaining seats only $50.
But hurry before they sell out again.
Tickets on sale now at eventbrite.com and godstryingtotellyousomething.com.
It's a night of theater you'll never forget.
It's God's Trying to Tell You Something.
Be a part of the live studio audience.
He's trying to tell you something.
Don't miss it.
Personal Law Office is your go-to attorney for criminal cases. We will work with you at every step to ensure you are fully informed and your rights are protected. Call me at 424-261-2075 if you're facing any criminal offenses.
Periods don't care what you're doing, but your pads should. Get Always Triple Protection System in Always Day and Night Pads. Always Day Pads protect when active by wicking away gushes 2 times faster than leading store brands and giving us up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort. When we size up our pad at night, we get the same triple protection, plus up to 75% more coverage in the back for when we're laying down. No matter what, Always has you covered, day and night.
Nerds. Here at NerdWallet, we often see people struggle with financial decisions, like with Helen. Hey, Helen.
Hello.
Helen, you're all over the place.
I'm trying to pick a rewards credit card, and I've ended up, well, everywhere.
With NerdWallet, you don't have to feel all over the place. NerdWallet NerdWallet has side-by-side comparisons of top credit cards. So whether you need a card for groceries or travel, the smartest card for you is right there.
Wow. Now I'm in one place with the right travel rewards card. Nice.
Nice indeed. NerdWallet, the smartest decision for all your financial decisions.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Our guest in this hour is Paul Blumenthal, HuffPost journalist, and I am pleased to have him on back on KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. Glad to have you tuned in on this Monday. Paul, let me go right back quickly here to Tennessee, since you teed this up. I don't need to color this question much more than this. We all saw what happened. We all saw, at least at this point, how it has ended. I'm not sure this is the end, because I suspect there's going to be a great deal more to come from this. People seem to be empowered and inspired and outraged and exercise their agency in a variety of ways, and that's why these two brothers now are back in their seats in the Tennessee Assembly. But take some time, take a few moments and give me your thoughts on how you saw this all play out.
Yeah, I think you described it well, and this is an outrageous abuse of power by the Republican legislature that was clearly racist in intent and in action. That they targeted these two men and the woman, Gloria Johnson, I believe is her name, for taking part in this protest, this nonviolent protest against gun violence, by cynically likening it to the January 6th insurrection to call for their expulsion, and then only expelled the two black men legislators and not the white woman, which, it couldn't be clearer than that. And I think that, this really shines a spotlight on this Republican legislature in Tennessee as being totally out of control. They've, I believe, passed a bill last week or at the beginning of, or even today, that will, aims to ban the connection of racism to slavery in education. This is just wild what's going on in this country, and this is just very clear. It harkened back to Julian Bond being denied his seat in the Georgia State Senate back in the 1960s. It's ugly to see this kind of stuff return.
Yeah. Do you think that in any way the gun lobby or Republicans were damaged by this? Clearly, at the end of the day, the two brothers again returned to their seats. Republicans tried something that succeeded momentarily, and then it boomeranged on them. And yet I am wondering whether or not you think that there was significant damage done to Republicans and their agenda, any damage done to the gun lobby, or is this just now simply a return to business as usual?
I think that there's been a lot of negative attention on the Tennessee Republican majority in the legislature, a lot of stories coming out about, its members having, inappropriate relationships with staffers or other kinds of corrupt instances, the kind of stories that we don't get when there's a dearth of local news. And finally, federal or national outlets pay attention. But in the long term, I'm just not sure that the state is so heavily gerrymandered. It's hard to challenge that in the courts right now. And, the Supreme Court may make it, totally legal to gerrymander forever. So I'm not sure what the victory line is here. Perhaps it moves some votes in Tennessee in suburban and urban areas towards Democrats, but it's a very polarized state along rural and urban lines, and heavily gerrymandered. It would be very hard to change the makeup of that legislature right now.
Yeah. A lot to talk about in this hour. As I said moments ago, I want to talk as we move through the hour about Clarence Thomas, about whom you have written. And Clarence Thomas could, in fact, face an investigation now. We talked about Clarence Thomas last week on this program when this story broke from ProPublica about his gifts and the lavish gifts and the trips he's taken from Harlan Crow, this billionaire mega donor, conservative billionaire mega donor. We talked about that story last week, and so now Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has called for an investigation, DOJ, Department of Justice investigation into Clarence Thomas Hidden Gifts. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this hour. Of course, there's always Donald Trump news. We'll get to that in this hour. Mike Pompeo, Trump's former Secretary of State, has announced he's not running for president. So that's one we can take off the list, but we'll talk about the impact of his not running as a Trump devotee for the Republican nomination. And at the moment, I want to get to this story. Congress is back today. They've been away for a couple of weeks, Easter recess. They are back in business, and 2 members are returning to their seats. Mitch McConnell has been out for a while with an injury, and John Fetterman, who beat Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, was away as well for a procedure. They're both back in their seats today now that Congress is back in session, and so is Dianne Feinstein. 89-year-old Dianne Feinstein, who has asked for some time away from her committee, Judiciary Committee. But this story is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, Paul. Again, Dianne Feinstein, 89 years old, has already announced that she's not going to run for re-election at the end of her term, which would be 2024. So she is suggesting that she wants to ride it out until the end of 2024. But everybody knows, given her condition right now, that she's not managing these issues that matter to Californians. And obviously, when you're a U.S. Senator, you're serving the entire nation, obviously. So that there are calls now for her to step aside. Just as there are calls for Clarence Thomas to be investigated, there now is starting to be a growing chorus of voices calling for Dianne Feinstein to step aside. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is smack dab in the middle of this, because if she were to resign, he would be allowed to appoint someone. They're already complicating the story a bit more. There are already 3 Democrats running to replace Dianne Feinstein, even though she is still in that seat. Adam Schiff is running, Barbara Lee is running, and Katie Porter is running. All 3 of them members of the House. All 3 of them announcing that they want to step up and run for, in fact, are running for that Senate seat. So this story of Dianne Feinstein gets a little more tricky, because now she's pretty much stepped back from her duties. At the national level, Paul Blumenthal and others are keeping their eye on this. We're here, of course, in Los Angeles. This station's heard across the country, but flagshipped in L.A., so we're keeping our eye on it from a California perspective. All that said, just want to give a quick backstory to where the story is at the moment vis-a-vis Dianne Feinstein. Paul Blumenthal of HuffPost, your take on this.
Well, I mean, there's been a question going on for a few years now about Feinstein's ability to continue to serve in her role as senator. There have been many stories suggesting increased senility or dementia due to old age, her forgetfulness, not understanding questions. You hear it from congressional reporters all the time. But now she's been, in hospital care or at home being treated for what they say is shingles, and has been missing a significant amount of time from the Senate. And her role on the Senate Judiciary Committee makes her vote very important in this closely divided Senate. With only 51 Democrats, they need every vote they can get to be able to advance judicial nominations. And without her there's been sort of a standstill on Biden's push to get more progressive judges nominated and put on the bench. So, I mean, that's why she said that she would step aside from her committee role, but that needs to be approved on the floor of the Senate, and that needs support from Republicans. And a lot of Republicans are saying they don't want to help Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer out to appoint more progressive judges, so they're going to try to block this. I mean, I think if she wants to help the Democratic Party get more judges on the bench in Biden's first term, I think that the easiest way to do that is to resign her seat and allow Governor Newsom to appoint a replacement.
Yep. And yet, at the moment at least, yet at the moment, she seems pretty stern, pretty obstinate about not stepping aside. And let me just be clear, I don't get this. For all of you who voted for Dianne Feinstein, as I have in my, in her career as a senator for this state, 3 decades and counting, it seems that all of us at some point have voted for Dianne Feinstein. Some of you, no doubt, listening right now have voted for her perennially. And yet I do not understand why, when persons reach this advanced age and they are having all kinds of issues, and let me be very clear, every one of us has to at some point do that dance with mortality. Ain't none of us going to get out of here alive. We all have to do that dance with mortality at some point. But for the life of me, I cannot understand why they won't step aside. And the parallel that I keep thinking about every day, Paul, and this won't surprise you, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Here was another white woman, to be frank about it, who had a great deal of power. And let me be clear, white women are not the only ones who hold on to power too long. Frankly, they don't have as much power as white males. So white males have written the book on this, as it were. So I don't mean to make a particular point about that. I'm just saying that both of them happen to be white women with a great deal of power, who obviously are very, very bright and don't seem to understand, and in Ginsburg's case, didn't seem to understand, and that they were hurting the causes they cared about by staying there. And I can't peg this to anything other than ego. I don't get it. And we all have an ego, but I can't peg it, Paul, to anything other than ego. I am still upset, God rest her soul, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg for not stepping aside when Barack Obama begged her in a private meeting in the White House to do so. She would have none of it. In fact, we were told in books that have been written since then, she was offended that the president, Obama at the time, tried to get her to step aside. Now we have Dianne Feinstein. It's abundantly clear you can't do the job to which the people of California elected you. She will not, apparently at the moment at least, will not step aside. And what hangs in the balance, again, are more progressive judges. And you potentially are holding that up, blocking that, making it more difficult. I don't get it, Paul. I don't know why she won't step down, and I don't know why Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't step down. That's just me, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right there, and certainly about the Senate and the Supreme Court. I mean, these are two places where you get a lot of big egos, and you also get this belief that you're supposed to stay as long as you can, maybe even die in office. And back when Obama was first president, he had a challenge in the Senate with Ted Kennedy and Robert Byrd, both being quite ill in their advanced age and missing votes. A lot of stuff had to be postponed or delayed, or they had to wheel Robert Byrd in on a hospital bed so that he could vote for some things. And there were calls for them to resign at the time too, and they did not. They waited until they died in office. And I guess this is just a thing that that is what people want to do in the Senate or the Supreme Court. I don't get it personally.
Yep, and to your point, these issues are they're so connected, right? Biden has been pushing, to his credit. He's been pushing rather aggressively to get more judges appointed. There are a number of things I could take Joe Biden to task for. He's not been as progressive as I would want him to be on a variety of things, and I think sometimes we get hoodwinked, bamboozled, run amok, and led astray by all the symbolism we get from the Biden administration with all these black faces in high places. I ain't mad at the president for the symbolic gesture of putting a lot of powerful African Americans in some pretty significant positions, including, of course, KBJ at the U.S. Supreme Court. And yet I don't want us to get sidetracked by the symbolism and not talk about the substance. And substantively, the president could be a bit more progressive as far as I'm concerned. We'll save that conversation for another time. But on this issue, he has been working rather, I think, assiduously and aggressively to get more judges appointed, and to see Dianne Feinstein sort of standing in this gap and not able to move out of the way is problematic for me. As I said, it reminds me of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I don't get why people who have spent their entire lives pushing a more progressive agenda could see that they're staying where they are is potentially causing irreparable damage, as was the case with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they can't seem to find it in their heads or in their hearts to just step aside. Don't get it. I will step aside for the moment. When we come forward, we'll continue our conversation with our HuffPost journalist, Paul Blumenthal. A great deal more to unpack in this hour. We haven't gotten to Clarence Thomas yet. We haven't gotten to Donald Trump yet. More stuff to unpack as we move through this hour. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Thank you for joining us on this Monday. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The nation is once again grieving after two more mass shootings. In a statement Sunday, President Biden called gun violence outrageous and unacceptable while slamming Republican lawmakers for not acting on the issue. A shooting at a teen's birthday party in Alabama left at least 4 dead and more than a dozen injured Saturday night. Also, 2 people died and at least 4 were injured following a shooting at a park in Kentucky. Now to the city of Akron, Ohio, where it's continuing to watch and wait as a special grand jury considers possible indictments against 8 officers involved in last summer's shooting death of African-American Jayland Walker. Court observers predict a decision could come early this week. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Heading through Hacienda Heights, it's going to be a problem on our 60 West at Hacienda Boulevard. Looks like a wreck onto the right shoulder. As you get towards Azusa Avenue, the slow drive. The 60 West at Lorena Street, Boyle Heights, a big rig blew a tire and it's blocking 2 of the right lanes. We're slow from Indiana Street. Taking the 5 north, approaching the 10. Looks like a crash onto the right shoulder here. Pico Rivera Whittier, the 605 south at Beverly. Earlier trouble still sitting on the right shoulder. And a wreck now in Mission Hills on the 118 eastbound at Sepulveda Boulevard. A collision blocking the right lane.
Looking for a late night spot to get the crew together? 3 words, Buffalo Wild Wings. They've got drinks and apps starting at $4 from 10 p.m. till close. B-Dubs, where late night food and drinks start at $4. Cheers to that. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void or prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very impressive debut in the NBA playoffs for the Lakers and Clippers. The Lakers win by 16 at Memphis. The Clippers hold on for a 5-point win in Phoenix. 4 Laker players scored 20 or more. Rui Hachimura had 29 off the bench. John Moran suffered a serious injury to his right hand when he fell hard to the floor on a drive to the basket. Moran is doubtful for Game 2 Wednesday night. Tip-off at 4:30 on TNT. The Clippers get 38 from Kawhi Leonard to hold off Phoenix. 9 points, 11 rebounds, 3 block shots, 2 steals, and 5 offensive rebounds. Game 2 for the Clippers and Phoenix is Tuesday at 7 on TNT. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tell me I'm the boy that girl. You are young, gifted, and black.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
And that's a fact.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I won't thank you.
KBLA Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to a lunch for 10, brought to you by the Original Taco Pete's. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580 to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week, sponsored by the Original Taco Pete's, a black-owned restaurant. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
I know it could have happened without you.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. We're glad to have you listening today to KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. Our guest in this hour is Paul Blumenthal, HuffPost journalist, and we are kicking off this Monday, as we do most Mondays, trying to catch up on all the political news that is, over the weekend that you might have missed, A lot to unpack in this hour. We've talked about a lot of stuff already, but a great deal more in front of me that I want to move through on the back half of this hour. Let me start with this. We were talking earlier in today's program. We started today talking about, in case you just tuned in, more mass shootings over the weekend, or more shootings, period, including a young black teenager, a boy who was shot by a homeowner after going to the wrong house to pick up his siblings. Just a mistake on his part to pick up his siblings, and he ends up shot a few times. Just sad and tragic. We talked about that. We talked about this shooting in Alabama, Sweet 16 party. 4 people killed, dozens of others who were hurt in that another shooting in Kentucky we didn't even get to, but these mass shootings continue. I mentioned also earlier, 107 days into the year we are today. 107 days into the year, 160 mass shootings so far. And counting, sadly. So Donald Trump, speaking of those mass shootings, Paul Blumenthal has had this to say, that mass shootings are not a gun problem, as he continues to pledge his loyalty and force others to do the same to the NRA. But that's Donald Trump's words, that mass shootings in America are not a gun problem. Your thoughts on Trump's comments?
I mean, I think that, it just shows how much these Republican candidates have to appeal to the National Rifle Association, to the gun lobby, to the gun industry, to get support from people who are, gun enthusiasts, people who are obsessed with guns. And I think that obviously the facts show that whether it's mass shootings or more commonly just, the kind of ordinary gun violence that doesn't come along with somebody trying to get themselves killed by the cops, that happens every day in this country. It's, this country is overflowing with guns. The gun industry has pushed guns in advertisements all across the country, even after mass shootings. There are more guns in this country per capita than maybe any other country, certainly any other European country or Canada, even some Central American countries. And then you just need to look at suicide statistics and how high they are here. One of the reasons why is just the easy availability of guns. And, a lot of people try to commit suicide by other ways and fail, but you definitely don't fail when you try to shoot yourself with a gun. And I mean, it's just very clear. Every statistical piece of data shows that the reason why we have so many shootings in this country is because of the prevalence and easy availability of guns.
Well, there you have it. Won't surprise this audience at all, but Donald Trump is on the record once again saying today that mass shootings are not a gun problem. Okay, Mr. Trump, I'll leave that right there for the moment. Let me, since we're talking about conservatives, move now to Clarence Thomas. So we all saw the news last week when ProPublica broke this story, a very detailed story, deftly written by this reporter about what they had uncovered, what they'd uncovered vis-a-vis Clarence Thomas and his friendship with a conservative billionaire mega donor named Harlan Crow. So apparently over the years, Clarence Thomas has taken lavish gifts and trips from his friend Harlan Crow. At first, the justice tried to stay out of it, and then the heat got so hot in the kitchen that he had to put out a statement. His statement essentially was that I didn't know I had to report this stuff. Okay, if you believe that. So you're a graduate of the Yale Law School. You are the longest-serving member of the Supreme Court at the moment, and yet you didn't know that you had to report this stuff. Okay, Mr. Thomas. Again, that's his response. Now we have Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, now calling for a Department of Justice investigation of Clarence Thomas's hidden gifts. So this story hasn't died. I guess the question, though, Paul, since you're inside the Beltway, what's your assessment of what kind of legs this story has? And I ask that because Clarence Thomas has been caught on the carpet for all kinds of things. For that matter, so have other justices. And there seemed to really not be a code of conduct a code of ethics, a code of conduct for these Supreme Court justices. They're doing all kind of stuff. It appears, leaking documents and taking trips and gifts, et cetera, and they are not treated in the way that others are when it comes to playing by the rules. I digress on that point, but what kind of legs do you think this story has, or is this another story where it'll get some traction for a few days and Clarence Thomas will skate once again?
I mean, I think it should have more legs, and perhaps the Democrats in Congress could do more about it to give it more legs. They control the Senate Judiciary Committee. They could hold hearings on this. They could call Clarence Thomas to appear before a hearing. Instead, Senator Whitehouse and Senator Dick Durbin have called for the Judicial Conference, the body that oversees ethics of the federal judiciary, to refer Thomas to the Department of Justice for investigation. But they could, Durbin is the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Whitehouse is close behind him, and they could hold hearings. They could call Thomas to testify, and I don't see any reason not to. It's very, as you mentioned, it's very clear that Thomas, he's a judge. That's his job. He's supposed to be able to judge what law applies to what. And here he says, I didn't know I couldn't do that. It's hard to believe that. That he's been caught before. In 2004, the Los Angeles Times reported on other gifts he received from the same billionaire, Harlan Crow, that he had failed to put on his ethics disclosures. He failed to list his wife's payments from think tanks, from educational institutions, from conservative billionaires on his disclosure forms. Now we have, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in luxury trips paid for by this billionaire. The same billionaire also bought his mother's home from him, which he didn't list that purchase on his disclosure forms. His mother still lives in this house and is apparently not paying rent to this billionaire. There's just a huge list of ways that he is obtaining extra money, gifts, benefits from wealthy people who have business before the court. And it's hard to believe that, he just didn't know that he couldn't disclose this. It's beyond belief. It's very clear that he's in violation of the ethics law here.
So now you raise something that's always been fascinating for me. Not the first time I've discussed this, not the last, I'm certain. But I'm listening to you run this list of all the things that Clarence Thomas has apparently done over the years that he's gotten away with, as he votes every other day. It seems to take this democracy, this experiment in democracy, backwards. This country at its best has always been about expanding rights. He's been at the forefront for decades now of leading the effort to shrink rights in this country. His behavior, his bad behavior notwithstanding, we know what his political agenda is. And when you run this list of all the things he's done, he's gotten away with, my mind immediately went to why it is that Democrats behave the way they do and Republicans behave the way that they do. To your point, Democrats control the Judiciary Committee. That same Judiciary Committee we were discussing earlier is where Dianne Feinstein sits, having now asked for some time away from the committee to pull back from her responsibilities. We were talking earlier, in case you've just tuned in, about why she just won't resign. She's standing in the way in a very closely divided Senate, and I think she ought to resign and give Gavin Newsom the opportunity to appoint someone to her seat. That is becoming more and more of a political hot potato as the days go by. We will see what happens in the long run, but she has said she wants to serve intends to serve through the end of 2024. Frankly, respectfully, I don't see it. Again, we discussed that earlier. But back to Democrats who control the Senate Judiciary Committee. You have to believe, Paul, that if Republicans controlled the Senate Judiciary Committee and they had KBJ or Elena Kagan or Sonia Sotomayor with all the stuff that Clarence Thomas has done, if they were guilty of the same, you can best believe they would call hearings, how might I put this, sooner than at once and quicker than right now. Sooner than at once and quicker than right now, there'd be hearings called to undo Kagan and Sotomayor and KBJ. They have them on the hot seat in front of a Senate committee immediately, and yet Democrats, to your point, have that same power, but they won't do it. What are they afraid of, as you see it?
Personally, I am not sure what they're afraid of. There seems to still be some kind of despite everything we've seen with the Supreme Court in the past few years, some kind of strong deference to the court's authority, to the court's legitimacy among Democrats, even though, this is not a Supreme Court that's going to step in and protect civil rights, civil liberties. It's the exact opposite kind of court. And they're still out here trying to protect its legitimacy for unknown reasons. Clarence Thomas, clearly in violation of the law here. They have total power to call him before Congress to testify, total power to call Harlan Crow, any other associates involved in this to testify. And they're deferring to the Department of Justice, which is, that DOJ should be investigated as well. But the Senate and Congress should use their power. They have the power to do this.
Yeah, this station is unapologetically progressive. The audience knows that. And yet it troubles me how Democrats can be so spineless, so scared, so scary. You've got the power. The evidence is in front of you that you're complaining every day that you need to fix the Supreme Court. To your point about legitimacy, it has very little legitimacy left. The numbers, the poll numbers are pretty clear of how little trust and confidence the American people have in the court. But Democrats are always complaining about the court. They're complaining that Merrick Garland should have been a Supreme Court justice in the Obama era and not the current Attorney General. So here's your moment. And some would call this, if they called the hearing clearly, many would call it partisan politicking. It's not. The guy has broken the law, and he's acting like he didn't know he had to report this. You have him right where you want him, and you're afraid to use the power that you have to call hearings. Democrats have no spine. They kill me. I digress. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
15 million California Medi-Cal enrollees to have eligibility status reviewed starting this month. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry, story courtesy of CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Pay attention to your Medi-Cal notices in the mail. As of April 2023, California has 14 months to review the eligibility of 15 million Medi-Cal enrollees after suspending this process throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. An estimated 2 to 3 million Californians may leave the program during this unwinding period. It is critical that enrollees watch out for notifications from local Medi-Cal offices. If you receive a yellow envelope, that means contact information or pertinent information to keep your coverage is missing.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. It's normal. With CalHope's free and secure mental health resources, it's easy to get the help you and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
The FAA will be hiring air traffic controllers soon. Applications open June 24th through June 27th. If you know someone between the ages of 18 and 30 who might be interested, please tell them to go to www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply today. The salary range is $103,000 to $164,000. There's also paid training and school. Again, that's www.faa.gov-BE-ATC. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply to be an air traffic controller. This community call to action is brought to you by the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and KBLA Talk 1580.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Paul Blumenthal of HuffPost on KBLA Talk 1580. Mike Pompeo, who was Secretary of State, of course, during the Trump administration, has announced that he is not running for president. Nikki Haley, of course, who was also a Trump lieutenant, is in the race. I was waiting to see whether Pompeo was going to get in because it'd be fascinating for me to see how this race rolls out with all these Trump lieutenants, former lieutenants, running against him. But Pompeo says he's not in. How'd you read that?
I mean, if you just look at the polls, nobody's really getting much traction aside from Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, maybe Nikki Haley a little bit. Mike Pompeo looked at the polls and saw that 0% wasn't a good number to run on. So I guess that's why he isn't taking the plunge this year.
Yep.
And that may be the case with some other candidates. I mean, there just isn't a lot of room when Donald Trump is on the ballot, apparently.
Yeah, speaking of poll numbers, and I'm not sure I believe in these, and certainly when it comes to the presidential election of 2024, we are light years away, and yet it's difficult for the media to not cover the horse race, particularly as we move closer to the point where Joe Biden will officially announce. He was on NBC last week and said once again he intends to run, but has not yet formally declared his candidacy. So we expect that in the coming days. What we do know is that Robert Kennedy Jr. Has announced that he is going to challenge Joe Biden, intends to challenge him, so that Joe Biden will apparently at least be primaried by one candidate, again, Robert Kennedy Jr., but there's some new data out this morning from Politico. And when we come forward, I want to share these numbers. But there's a huge story in Politico this morning that says Biden's poll numbers look grim as he preps for re-election bid. Biden's poll numbers look grim as he preps for re-election bid. And these numbers don't look good. I'll unpack them for you with Paul Blumenthal when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Protho-Stith. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid, and we don't back down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Got about 5 minutes left in conversation with Paul Blumenthal of the HuffPost as we talk politics in this first hour today. Let me just read to you the first couple paragraphs of this story from Politico. You can Google it and read the entire article for yourself. But the headline, once again, Biden's poll numbers look grim as he preps for re-election bid. A deep dive into the numbers reveals President Joe Biden isn't just struggling with independents and near unanimous disapproval among Republicans. He's also soft among Democrats and left-leaning Democratic groups. Biden has not yet officially announced he's running again next year, though he said he plans to. Polls show his approval rating is hovering in the low 40s, right around the mark where some of his predecessors, who were denied second terms, sat at this very point in their presidencies. According to 538, Biden's average approval rating stands at 43%, about 9 points lower than his 52% disapproval rating. That's only 1 point higher than Trump's 538 approval rating on April 15, 2019, at the same point in his one-term presidency. So the point here again is that his numbers would indicate, as compared to other presidents who were running for a second term, his numbers at this point indicate that he could very well be denied a second term. Of course, you can't beat somebody with nobody, so somebody's got to run against him. Somebody's got to beat him. But, Paul, your thoughts on the data out this morning from Politico?
I mean, it's not great for Joe Biden to be hovering in the low 40s, but you mentioned some presidents in their first term have been at that same place at the same time and lost re-election. Some others have also won re-election, whether it's Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama, who were also hovering in the low 40s at around this point in time in their presidencies. So I mean, it's still early, and also the likely Republican nominee will be Donald Trump, who's quite even more unpopular than Joe Biden, has seen his numbers drop after his indictment, especially among independents. But, I mean, the issue that you mentioned in that Politico article with Biden is that the big thing that has seen his numbers go down recently is among Democrats, and particularly young Democrats. And it's not entirely clear why. It's possible this could be related to climate change positions, like the allowing of the Willow oil drilling project to go forward in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
But it remains to be seen if this is just a temporary fluctuation. But it's true that Joe Biden wasn't a lot of people's first choice in 2020. And I think that this sort of reflects that fact.
Yeah. Two things in the 2 minutes I have left. I am always struck by the fact, it sort of tickles me on one hand, but I'm always struck by the fact that seasoned reporters like yourself continue to say that Donald Trump is the likely Republican nominee. Every time I hear that, I laugh, because I'm thinking of all the indictment already that's come forth. There may be other indictments, and the media contingent in D.C. still seems to think that he's the odds-on favorite to be the nominee. Why do you feel that way?
I mean, I guess I haven't seen any evidence to prove otherwise. It is still early. Ron DeSantis could, when he actually announces a campaign, could challenge him.
Yeah.
The polling is very early, but I just don't see anything to change that. And considering, the past from 2015 and on, since he, came down that escalator, it's hard to not take his position in the party seriously.
And as a reporter, in the 60 seconds I have left, as a reporter, how do you process that we could see Biden, Trump, too? I mean, God help us, but how are you processing that?
I mean, it's hard to explain, I guess. It's just going to be another crazy election cycle, the third one in a row. And who knows, maybe Trump loses and then runs again in 2028. Who knows when we'll get rid of him.
Yeah. To your point about young people being turned off by this process, in the most beyond being young, in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever, two old white guys running against each other again does not excite me. It does not. I think turnout, if that's what happens, I think we're going to see historic lows in turnout. Two old white guys running each other a second time. Good Lord. Anyway, I digress. Paul, good to have you on. We'll do it again, my friend. Take good care of yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, my friend. Hour 2 of Tavis Smiley after news, traffic, and sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore here.